have Mike Southerland, who is a former city councilman, city of Bryan, running for mayor of Bryan. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you. Appreciate Habitat doing this. It's wonderful. I was president of Habitat for a little while too. At the same time, I was president of the Rotary Club. So,
thank you for your service. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I really did want to go into your background for a little bit.
Okay.
As far as not just your background, but then hopefully get to hear a little bit of what motivated you to run.
Okay. We're going to start with background or motivation?
Sure. Let's start background.
Okay. Well, I was drafted in the military in 1966, October of. And I spent, after that, went to flight school, flew in helicopters in Vietnam. And I spent 22 years in the military. I enjoyed it. I had all kinds of different experiences. I did everything. The first job I had in the Army was pick up trash. I was on a trash truck. And before I retired, I got promoted to lieutenant colonel and was recommended for colonel. And before I retired, I was a acting battalion commander for the 420th Engineer Brigade. So, and then in between there I ran a military community in Germany of about 2,000 military. And it was about 2,000 total, civilians and military both.
Where was that?
That was in Dexheim, Germany. It's about 80 miles southwest of Frankfurt.
Okay.
It was out in the middle of it was a wonderful place, out in the middle of grape fields.
That sounds awesome.
Vineyards all around.
That sounds
great. The Germans were very, very friendly. They helped us, but we were pretty well isolated, so it was a challenge. But we had everything that you have in a city, from a theater to a laundry to a library. We had 3 dentists and a doctor.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big time operation in terms of sophistication.
Yeah.
Theater, we had gym, we had, never will forget my boss came in after I was there, and we had this auto repair shop where kids could take their cars and work on them and repair them and get on the road, because the Germans were tough on maintenance on vehicles, private vehicles. And so they would park these cars all around, kind of out of the way from the main headquarters, but all around on the streets. And he was upset about that. Why do we have to have all those cars parked on the street like that? He says to me. I said, well, so you know what? Every one of those vehicles you see probably keeps 2 people from being involved with drugs and alcohol.
There we go.
It keeps them off the street, and they got a purpose, and they spend a lot of time doing it. So we had all kinds of stuff like that.
That's cool. So after the military, what did you do then?
I agree. My last assignment in the military was here in Bryan to the 420th Engineer Brigade.
Okay.
At that time, Al Jones was the commander, and I was the regular Army advisor. At that time, you had an active duty person with every unit that was in the Reserve and National Guard. And so it was my purpose to help supervise their training and help them through all the different perils that they have to go through with the Army Reserve System.
Was it associated with Texas A&M or
no,
separate?
They're separate. It had nothing to do with Texas A&M. There was a lot of kids from Texas A&M that were in the the Army Reserve to get their scholarships and stuff like that down. So,
got it.
But it was separate operation altogether.
Okay. And then did you go into politics pretty quick after you got out, or it was a little bit of time?
No, it was, I retired in 89, so I spent 5 years here before I retired. Yeah. And so I got to know the community, and I got involved in Rotary and all kinds of different projects like that. And, and then it just slowly worked into it. And what got me in the local politics was in the Rotary Club, the single member, that large district person was in the Rotary Club with me. I sat with him. And so I did, at that time I had an insurance agency, so I was quoting homes. And so I quoted a home in Bryan and I quoted a home in College Station. And I said, wait a minute, did you make a mistake? Because there was 10% difference in the pricing. So I couldn't figure it out. So I got a house that 2 quotes exactly the same and changed the zip codes. And so then I looked into that, and there's a fire rating for each town. And College Station's fire rating was 2, and we were a 4. And so I started looking at what we had, and I said, I don't understand. So we paid 10% more in insurance than they did in College Station. So I got to looking around, and I said, I don't understand why that is. Why are we paying more? We got all the same equipment, great people, all that jazz. Why? And so I asked the guy to sit across the table from me. Didn't answer me. So, I asked him a couple of times over a couple of months and didn't get an answer. So then I called the city. I said, hey, what about this? Didn't get an answer there either. So that's when I decided to run, because I want to get that straightened out.
Oh.
And so that's one of the things that happened is I pressed that all the time. And we got to the point where we got a 2, like they got a 2. As a matter of fact, they can get a 1, but I don't think there's any reason to have 1 because you don't get any lower insurance. And there's really no significant difference. It's like, what's the difference between a rocket that's a 90% hit or 85% hit, You still got them, So
yeah.
So that's how I got started with that. And
that was at large?
And I ran it at large, yeah.
Okay.
And won that seat.
And then you went on to represent single-member District 4, or was that later?
4. It was after. I spent 2 terms there. I spent 6 years there. And then I was out and then got elected to single-member District 4. Stayed in there 2 terms. And during that process, they extended the time. The date of the elections. It went from May to November. So that's how I got 6 more months.
Got it. In terms of, you alluded to how very often, you were the lone vote out, or maybe we talked about it off the air, but that was the case, especially since I've been following Bryan politics. There were a lot of votes where you were the opposition.
Well,
how do you think
I would rather say not the opposition as opposed to a difference of opinion.
Yeah, that's probably better.
Yeah.
How do you think the Southerland mayor and the office behind it, how do you think they're going to function compared to some of the other opponents? Or let me rephrase it. The fact that you've been having different views for so many years, are you going to carry that into becoming mayor to where it may be difficult to have any consensus on anything?
No, there'll always be consensus because there'll always be 4 people that agree. So it doesn't matter really what my view is. I'll just set the agenda and we'll talk about things and bring everybody's position. What I think needs to happen is whether I get voted against or not, I need to be able to, and anybody needs to be able to represent their position, explain why they're doing what they're doing. So maybe somebody else can say, well, maybe part of that's good for me. So they may change their position or move down a little bit or up a little bit. You do have some impact because the way those but everybody's going to be new up there. It's not going to be the same people, so it'll be a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, well, I don't think I phrased that the best, but forgive me if it was rude or something.
No. It's just, that's the way it is, and I have been asked about that on the radio several times about being troublemaker, pot stirrer. That's what
pot stirrer.
Yeah, that's what the guy says. I said, the problem for me is that growing up it was the same thing, but in the military, you're taught not to pass up a problem.
Right.
If you see a problem, you stop, take a look at it, and see what needs to be done. That's all there is to it. Because in that position, though, life and death can come about. Death can come about if you miss something that you shouldn't have missed. But in the city operation, it's not life and death so much as it is people's lives. They're not the living of their lives. It is the living of their lives, but not where they live or die. It's about how well they can live in the area. Right. So if I correct something and you got an issue and you bring it forward and we correct that, the whole town can be corrected and it'll be a wonderful place to live. That's my goal, to correct things that need to be corrected. There's not enough. You don't have to go around and look for things that are to fix. There's a lot of things that present themselves to you.
Like, what would be a couple examples?
Well, in the past, people have had issues with zoning, either businesses or individuals. It's just the neighbors don't take care of whatever it is. The streets aren't taken care of. So those kind of things need to be put on the table somewhere. So the way I work it is that if you have an issue, I look at it. If I can have an impact on it, I do. If not, I take it to the staff. If the staff can't have an impact on it, or there's something that blocks them from taking care of it, then I take it to the council. Okay. And during the time, it was when Raphael was on there, we put 200 items on the agenda.
Wow. Because
there's 2 people can put something on the agenda. And there were issues that people had problems with that couldn't be solved otherwise, that the council had to look at. And then, so once you take it to the council and it can't be solved there, and the people are still persisting, then you can change the charter. And I wrote 27 charter amendments, and 7 of which are adopted. But that has to be voted on by the people. So it's a process, it's not walking around town and, we're going to fix that. If it's bothering the people, that needs to be watched. Looked at and taken care of as possible.
the city of Bryan has been seen for a lot of years as the, quote, slightly more affordable of the two cities, Bryan and College Station. Now, some people will debate that, look at it differently, but that is a pretty common view. It's becoming less and less affordable, especially for low-income families, to be able to afford, especially housing, but then a number of other things in this town. More of them seem to be thinking about or even leaving the city itself, going to the county, going to towns surrounding it. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's still a place for low-income families in Bryan?
There's a place for everybody.
Okay.
And the problem, however, is, like I was saying earlier, it's a dilemma. Mm-hmm. Number one, the biggest thing I see, I'll get back to the question. The biggest thing I see is that A&M has about 30,000 people that take care of the grass and the janitorial and all that stuff. And they put them to a contract. They give them to a contractor.
Yeah.
And so that contractor doesn't pay nearly or have the benefits that A&M had. So those people are the ones that are kind of left out right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I know the REACH project, I'm familiar with them. I helped them get started. Yeah. And the REACH project deals with them. And most of them are in Bryan. Mm-hmm. And so somehow, if you don't take care of them, and people don't like that, a lot of people don't like that take care of because they don't want to spend any more money. Right. But the problem is, I think you're going to spend the same amount of money whether you take care of them or not, because there's going to be other issues developed with that. Mm-hmm. Homelessness and all kinds of things. Yeah. I mean, and I currently see the rise of homelessness. So from an altruistic standpoint, you got to take care of them. But from a business standpoint, you got to take care of them, because if you don't have them, you can't have A&M. What's A&M going to do without those people? That's a good point. It's a key thing to A&M. I mean, you can say, they're way down. They're not a professor. They don't teach anything like that. But it's like having a sewer system. Mm-hmm. You can't have a town without a functioning infrastructure. Right. And so we got to do something about that. And I don't advocate a lot of giveaway programs. It's like y'all do. Y'all don't give away. You have a hand up. That's and so, right. And there's many. Okay, number one of my opponents advocated and got elimination of mobile homes on private lots. We had about 600 mobile homes in Bryan that were older, but they weren't in the mobile home park. They were on their own lot. They'd been inherited. Right. And they got rid of that. So that's 600 units of low to moderate income housing that's not going to be available pretty soon. Mm-hmm. And there was no reason for it. I mean, they said it was we're going to help them get out of that spot, but they weren't offering any way to get out. Yeah. They were just saying, mobile homes gone, we're going to get out, So, and I told them in the council meeting, I said, if they could, they would have changed their life already, but they can't. Mm-hmm. And so if you take their house away from them and make them buy something they can't afford, they might lose everything. Right. So you got to really partner with them to get that taken care of, because we need those people. They have to be here. Yeah. You can't just say, go to Hearn or go to Franklin or go somewhere else. You can't say that. Right. Now, what's happening in College Station, however, is that the pricing of things, because of the concentration, I mean, in 90, they were 60,000. Now they're 120,000 more. Right. And so that's driven up the prices alone by itself. And as A&M grows, that drives the prices up more. Yeah. And since the children want to be over there by A&M, whether they go to Blinn or not, that's, a function of that. And so the people that used to live there, low to moderate income, can't live there now. Yeah. So, and, maybe some of the people on the council say, well, we don't need to take care of them. Mm-hmm. I've heard them say that. I've known people that they talk to. We don't need to take care of them. And I'm thinking, well, number one, are you a Christian? I mean, don't you get taught that, to take care of people? And number two, it's not like we don't have the money. It's not like we're destitute. I mean, they spending $200 million on a park. That's my number after I went through a bunch of things on that super park. Oh, yeah. They have about $200 million in the bank all the time. And plus they get like $50 million new money this year alone. This year alone. And we have that BTU. That BTU makes money hand over fist. So it's not like we don't have the assets. And the other aspect of that is, going back to the business point, is that the better we look, the better off everybody. Look and, actually correct the way things. You have to be neat, tidy, and clean, Yeah. And the people out like at Merrimont and Traditions, they're not judged by College Station. Mm-hmm. They're judged by Bryan. Right. The lowest of us. That's the problem. And so you can't get that past that what you're talking about, looking better or doing better for people until you get things under control that help everybody.
Yeah.
Like y'all do, like Habitat does.
Yeah. So a key part of what we've just been talking about, the affordability factor, is affordable housing.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, we do a little bit of affordable housing.
Yes, sir.
Some other organizations do.
Mm-hmm.
But we tend to take the viewpoint that a lot of the issue of unaffordable housing is supply, that things just aren't getting built the way that they need to, whether it is a rental situation or a new house. Do you have any ideas for the future of, even to a small extent, affecting that affordability issue, meaning prices being too high for families to be able to afford?
Well, there's a lot of rules you can make.
Right.
And I think y'all take people that are in substandard housing.
Right, for the most part, yeah.
And put them into a more brand new place, actually.
Oh,
and so in that regard, you can put some pressure on the people that don't maintain their houses to maintain their houses.
Uh-huh.
And there's communities in other parts of the state to do that. And I think College Station is thinking about doing the same thing, some kind of rental inspection, so that everybody has to meet a standard. Because I know there's people, there's illegal aliens or non-documented folks that are taking advantage of them. They put them in sheds and all kinds of stuff. So that needs to be looked at. Number two, there is a tremendous amount of money available to build housing for low to moderate income people. And I've helped 3 different groups do that. Have you ever heard of the 9% tax credit deal?
No, I haven't.
Well, there's a program that these particular people were building to, and there must be a lot of money in it because there was there's tremendous competition in it. And it would be really great for a town or like Habitat to get involved with because, it fits your mission and taking care of the city. So I've advocated to do that, to get those bids in there, but I never have gotten the city or Habitat to take it. Okay. So that would be one of my efforts, because there's besides just repairs, because y'all have some repair money, the feds have repair money, but this 9% tax credit, you can build hotels or you can build duplexes. I mean, there's a varied number of things you can do with it.
Okay. Where do you stand on, I know Austin is a city that's done this, a number of cities in Texas. Austin, Texas. As a city, I'm saying, where do you stand on Bryan looking at like an affordable housing bond or something like that? I haven't seen it brought up yet, but where would you be on that?
I wrote a charter amendment on that.
Oh, did you?
I did. It didn't get passed. They threw it in the trash. But I mean, it didn't get to the vote either, because in the way that one was done is that every year they'll do a survey on housing, what we need, and come up with a way to get 20% solved and a certain amount put against it. But that's where these programs with the state and the feds come in, because they're available.
Right.
And you can do it with that. The problem is the people that build them have to supervise them. If they don't supervise them, somebody's got to supervise them, because the bad guys come in and take over, and it makes a big mess. New Orleans is
affordable rental.
Yes, right.
Developments.
They're rental,
what you're saying.
Yes, and they can be multi-story. They can be duplexes. There's several of them in Bryan.
Right.
The one that I helped, I remember last week, the guy passed from cancer, is out there next to the UPS store. There's a apartment. It's not an apartment. It's a duplex complex.
Okay.
That's from that 9% tax credit. He's got one in College Station, and then there's another one in Bryan out on Sandy Point Road. That's a multi-story deal.
Okay.
But they're practical. I mean, they work by supervision.
Yeah. Okay. We may come back to the affordable housing topic again. Obviously, that's a focus of ours. But another thing.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'll wait till I come back.
You sure?
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure we had time to touch on Bryan and how it shares information. Some people will call it transparency. We have to follow what both cities, Bryan and College Station, are doing on a regular basis to make sure that the interests of Habitat, is held. And the thing I've noticed is, and I've heard complaints from others, is that Bryan seems to be a little bit more difficult to follow than College Station is in terms of the information put out there, how it's provided. There's nothing I've seen that's, wrong in a legal sense, but it just doesn't seem to be as open. Sorry if this is a leading question, but what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that there's an issue?
Yes. I think there's an issue, and I fought against that the 12 years I was on the council. I've written, I don't know if it was it was a charter amendment too it was an ordinance about, I tried to get them to simple thing like, if there's going to be a zoning change in your neighborhood, only people within 200 feet have to be notified, and only 2 weeks in advance. Mm-hmm. Well, that's way too short. That's way too close time. So that needs to be done to better communicate with people on what's happening in their neighborhood, where they bought a house, where they raised their kids. Sure. In their neighborhood. And if you communicate with people on those kind of things, they better understand what you're trying to do if you need to do it. But if you don't need to do it, they'll tell you. That's the problem. And being transparent is something, it's not native to the city council. I mean, it's not telling people what you're doing. For instance, College Station spent 5 hours this week in their council meeting because they had a lot to talk about. They had, like me, they have a lot of suggestions to offer. And every one of them usually has a difference of opinion on what to do. Right. But they talk about it as opposed to shut people off like the city council does here. And they come to some kind of agreement somehow. Usually some people will vote against it. There'll be a couple people vote against it. But overall, they come up with a better decision, and more people are happy with on the council with what they did because they get to discuss it.
They also have 9-hour meetings. So.
Well, okay, that's the price of doing business.
Right.
That business. I mean, when you get elected to do the business. Yeah. You don't get elected to do it when you want to.
Sure.
And if it's easy, you get elected to do the business. And if you don't like that, get off. Yeah. Go somewhere else. And the other thing, too, is that things like, I think it's a function of education, because just because you get elected doesn't mean you know what you're doing in the operational part, in the governing part. And there's no school that you go to. If you hadn't spent time like I did going to like the P&Z where the critical part of the information flows, if you don't go there and find out what's going on, you don't know. For instance, they spent, at the last council meeting, I guess it was about an hour. Most of the council meeting was about an hour. They were supposed to be talking about the budget, but they talked about the tax rate. But the budget is $500 million. The increase in spending is $56 million. And the tax rate that they were talking about was only like a $2 million deal. Million, actually. No, it wasn't either. It was $800,000 after the final suggestion came in. So they're talking about $800,000 when they're spending $500 million and $56 million new. They never said a word about that. And one thing, there's another thing that they don't do is they don't give any management indicators. Every job you have something to look at to tell, at a just a glance what's going on. And so the only thing you have is the budget. So you go through the budget, and if there's a increase or decrease that's out of whack, you need to look at it. Yeah. And there is one on this budget, besides the $56 million increase, is the police department. No. The police department, most everybody else got a 14% increase if they got one. The police department got 3.3%.
Did you say 14% for the other departments? Wow.
And that's the biggest number on there. 3.3% increase? Are you kidding me? With all that's going on with our children, all that's going on with people getting shot, all the upset that's going on that the police need to be involved in, 3.3%? And not one of them asked a question about that. Not one of them. Because there's all kinds of methods now that we can use to stop the shootings in the schools. Since Uvalde, they got in there and started working on it. And there's also equipment that the military has with those little drones. They can fly a little drone in through a hole and knock a guy out.
Oh, wow.
Without endangering anybody else.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, I know. And so we need to be looking at stuff like that. Yeah. Why put those kids in jeopardy because you're afraid to go in or you don't have equipment to go in when a little $1,000 drone can take care of them?
There we go.
So that's why I'm worried about that. And then I went to a meeting the other day. I was questioning about that, saying that 3.3%. And they said, well, you can't control the budget. I said, who's supposed to control the budget? I mean, you guys are in charge. And number two, they said, well, that's the school system. Well, it's a school system until the shooting starts. The school system is obligated to keep them out. But once it starts, that's the police department.
Right.
The police department, if it's in Bryan, that's the police department, which all the schools would be out here in Bryan. So police department, and then the next person is the mayor. He's in charge of the disaster. That's by law. And so if you think that we don't have a play in those schools and taking care of them, you don't know what you're talking about. And the other thing, too, is that they have to take care of us, and they have to take care of themselves. I think next to the children, probably taking care of themselves and making sure they have the right stuff to do it with is really important. And number two on the police department, or 3 or 4, wherever we are, I don't know, I lost track, is that the most important thing a policeman can do, besides find the bad guys, is shoot them. Get them out, take them out.
Yeah.
And they don't go to the range enough.
They're saving ammo.
They're saving money, and the city won't spend the money on it. So they need to have whatever they need. They need to have it. I don't care what it is, because they're going to take care of. They're going to protect us, our children, and themselves, so they can live to fight another day. And so that's the transparency we need. Comes from them on the council knowing what they're supposed to do and checking everything to make sure it's right.
Yeah.
And so if the current council can eliminate communication with you, they do. They also took out the broadcast of the Here Citizens, so they are very less effective, because people watch you say something and your friends say, oh, well, I got the same problem, or somebody you don't even know says that. So that encourages people, and they don't feel alone. So it's a way to bring people together too. Right. So, but they eliminated that. So it's not on TV, and it's at 5:30. They're really strict about 3 minutes and all that stuff.
Right.
Anyway, so those kind of anything to make the citizens know what's going on needs to be done. Yeah. And I'll have meetings all over town, engage people, because it's if you feel connected, you're a lot easier to deal with when there's problems.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense.
You don't feel connected, it's trouble.
Yeah. So this is going to be a very broad question, but where do you see the city of Bryan, headed in the next decade, 10, 15 years, and where do you want to take it, if you have any ideas?
Yeah, I think, like the concerns I was telling you, but I think I'd like to see, when I first got elected in 2006, somebody asked me that question, and I said, well, I want to see everybody that lives in College Station want to live in Bryan. And this guy I was talking to said, that ain't no go. I said, well, think about it. What would you have to do to have that happen? You got to take care of your streets. You got to take care of your infrastructure. You got to take care of your people. There's two things in the city. There's the people and the equipment and infrastructure. You got to take care of both of them. You can't let one lax. So what we're talking about, what I'm worried about is that if I don't know why we've got the low to moderate income, but we got it. And that low to moderate income thing supports A&M. And they got it. They are the driver from around here. So if they're not taken care of with the support they need, we got a problem. And I don't, I didn't volunteer for the military. I got picked, but I made the best of it. Made a career out of it. So that's what we have to do. And those people have to be cared for. If you don't think of it as a Christian thing, it's an economic thing. They are an economic driver because they do so much. They spend so much money. I guess most of them just spend everything they have. So they put a lot of money in the economy. Sure. So you got to watch out for that. So housing, and that I don't know what price range it is, but housing, and then the people that can't afford any housing. We got to watch out for that too. Yeah.
But it'll cost a lot of money, though.
Well, $200 million on a park, huh? And my numbers say that thing's going to cost $5 million a year.
You think so?
Yeah.
A year?
No, I think so. I just added up the numbers they gave me when they first started looking at it, and it was a $5 million loser.
Oh, $5 million a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it costs $200 million to build it.
Right.
Between 150 and 200 million, because they don't report all the numbers. You got to dig them out.
Yeah. Okay. So I see what you're saying.
So we got to get the goal is to make us the city on the hill, to make us look as good as we can. Start on Texas Avenue. I sent when Mayor Nelson got elected. I went down Texas Avenue with a cell phone out the window, took a picture of all that stuff. I said,
nice.
Here's where you need to start. Here's where you need to start. This is how people judge us right away. They do that. I mean, they do, where it's your clothes or whatever it is. they judge the way you look.
Right.
And a lot of people, new people, like I moved around a lot. And so that's the way I figured out where to go. If something was trashy, like especially a business that you needed help from, you're not going to go in there. You're going to go in neat, tidy, and clean. Yeah. Doesn't have to be a mansion, but it's got to be neat, tidy, and clean and look like they know what they're doing.
Right.
And you can't do that without taking care of people.
That's true. That is true. Thanks for joining Think Brazos, our podcast. Before we go, though, is there anything you want to say to the people watching this, or how can those people get in touch should they want to do that?
Okay. My email is mike@sutherlandformayor.com. Okay. And my cell phone number is 979-229-7805. And I'll answer it. If I can't answer it, if I'm dealing with somebody else, I'll call you back. Leave a message. And if the other issue too is if you have an issue with the city of Bryan, you need something fixed, leave me a message, and I can just transfer your message to the city, and they can start working on it right away. And we'll follow up that way. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to being mayor because I've got so much experience in dealing with the things that I see as the pot stirrer. But as a mission to take care of people, I have a lot more experience to do that. Understand the system. You have to understand the system before you can play the game. You got to know the rules before you can play the game. Huh? Yeah. So that's what I do. I know the rules. I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, this has been Mr. Southerland, Mike Southerland, for the mayor of Bryan. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate the questions.